Good morning, I'm WaywornWyrm, and welcome to my channel. And welcome back to The Pugilist, Episode 8, Badger's Greetings. Arthur sat at his laptop, staring at the screen. He had a rough sketch detailing every link he knew of for Max, as well as general gang activity in the theater district. He also had Word documents on each node in the sketch. He kept going through these, trying to find a good connection to Badger. But after 2 hours of just flipping through documents and reading, he felt like he was no closer than he was before he started. He was getting desperate. He picked up his phone to call Detective Kane from the business card she gave him on their first meeting. Then he thought better of it and set it back down. Their meeting in the hospital was only a couple of weeks ago, and he wasn't going to go running to her so fast. Even more so because he wasn't sure if she was actually on his side or not. Eventually, Arthur gave up and went to the docks not too far from the theater district. As the pugilist, he would scour the area for any signs of Badger. He did not expect to come across any, but there was always the chance that something would fall into his lap, or at least something would be jogged loose in his memory. He was not ready to face Badger again, but if he could start running him to ground, that might help stop the spread of Max throughout the city, as Arthur waited for his friend Horner Belower to finish with the device he was making. Suddenly, there was a sound almost directly in front of him, and Arthur became aware of a man clad in all black, standing before him drawing a sword. The man was maybe 5 feet in front of him, and for the life of him, Arthur had no idea how the man got there. He finished drawing his sword and held it at the ready. Mr. Badger sends his greetings, and politely asks you to cease and desist in your efforts to track him down, the man said simply. Arthur shook his head and put his hands up to box this man with a sword. Maybe not the smartest choice that Arthur had ever made, but he was not going to be thrown off the trail by such a small obstacle. "Have it your way, then," the man replied, with sadness in his voice, before rushing forward to Arthur to strike at him with his sword. As the sword sliced across Arthur's side, he moved his body to minimize the cut, and he was quite successful, with his vest taking the brunt of the attack. Arthur transitioned from a defensive move into an offensive turning and landed a stunning attack to the man as he stepped past Arthur in his attack. The man staggered off, the tip of his sword resting on the ground as he shook his head trying to recover from the attack. Arthur capitalized on this and went over to deliver another devastating blow. He delivered a punch to the man's kidneys, striking them hard. This attack was the one that ended the fight. The man did not recover and crumpled to the ground. But before Arthur could do much more than start to catch his breath after such a short fight, a group of men holding heavy pipes walked towards him, encircling him. One of them moved forward a step. Badger wasn't sure if he'd get past his first agent, but if he did, we were waiting. We didn't expect you to take him out so quickly, but here we are. Looking at each of them, Arthur noticed there were 7 of them. This would be one of the hardest fights of his life. He put his fist back up and waited for what came next. There were people on 3 sides of him, and behind him was the pier and the South River. The 6 people who were all waiting rushed in at Arthur and started to swing at him with their pipes. He was able to fend them all off at first, keeping the blows from solidly hitting. He then followed up with a jab to the face of one of the 6 men. Even though he wasn't aiming very well, due to the mass of bodies surrounding him, Arthur managed to hit the man so hard he staggered backward and fell to the concrete, apparently knocked out. The leader stepped forward and joined the mass, and hit Arthur hard across the face. This brought Arthur to his knees for a moment as he protected his body as best he could from the rain of pipe blows. The pipes continued to rain down, but with the smaller target offered by him kneeling, the pipes were getting in the way of each other. Only 2 hit well, but they were not critical injuries. Arthur tensed the muscles in his legs and shot forward into one of the men, breaking out of the circle and bashing the man into the ground after the hit, and ended up several feet away. The man did not move to get up after he was dropped. Arthur spun around and readied himself for the next mass charge of people. It was the leader who stepped up first, swinging for a large blow. He was able to hit Arthur hard enough to stun him for a moment as stars burst into his vision and his ears rang. The men rushed forward again against the stunned Arthur, but Arthur was able to continue to fend them off, although it was clear that he could not take many more solid hits. These pipes were nasty. Arthur's fist popped out again, knocking one of the men backward. He didn't take them out of the fight, but they were dazed for at least a few moments. The leader swung again, hitting Arthur once more, but this time the pipe didn't land well, and Arthur was able to shrug off the hit. 2 more pipes of the 3 goons hit Arthur, but he was able to continue to shrug them off for the moment. He knocked one of the 3 remaining goons back, leaving him stunned and staggered, just as the one he had knocked back a few seconds ago came back into the fray. The leader tried to take out Arthur's leg with a blow from his pipe, but Arthur managed to withstand it. As the other 2 pipes came in, Arthur was able to grab one out of the man's hand and throw it into the river behind him. The second hit, but only as a glancing blow. Arthur threw an uppercut with all of his strength into the stomach of the leader, and as it hit, he heard the air whoosh out of the man as he staggered back, stunned. The 2 pipes and a fist made their way towards Arthur. One of the pipes hit, but he was able to deflect the blow from doing much harm. The second pipe missed him, but he couldn't block the punch that hit him in the gut hard. His next punch was sent out to the last goon with a pipe who he hadn't hit, and he dropped him. Somehow, he was managing to get the upper hand in this fight. The leader stepped back into the fray, shaking off the last of his days. A pipe and a fist was what came in at Arthur that time, and he managed to block the fist and deflect the pipe. He was looking to end the fight, so he punched hard at the man who had been dazed before and still had a pipe. This punch was not enough to take him out, but it was enough to stun him once again as he staggered back. The leader's pipe came back in to hit Arthur, who managed to just withstand the blow. But he was getting closer and closer to being taken out. A well-aimed punch came in that Arthur took, but it still hurt. He wasn't sure he could take much more as he watched the staggered guy come back in. He rushed at the leader, doing the same move for earlier, where he rushed him away from the other 2. Every person in the fight was clearly near the edge of what they could take, and Arthur was hoping that if he could separate himself from most of the group, he could win. He wasn't able to end the fight against the leader, who managed to resist being thrown to the ground, but it clearly knocked some of the wind out of him. The leader tried pounding Arthur's back as he was pushed away from his goons, but he was not able to land a decent blow. His men followed after Arthur, reaching in to almost empty tanks. Arthur struck again at the leader, hitting him in the throat. The lead man croaked out as he was hit and was stunned for a moment as Arthur continued to create distance between himself and the other 2 men who were having trouble keeping up. Arthur then hit the one with the pipe in the ribs and heard a crack as some ribs broke as the man stumbled back. The other one tried to use this moment to punch Arthur, not realizing he was now going one-on-one with a professional boxer, and the only thing he was able to hit was the air. "Here, let me show you how it's done," Arthur said, punching the man hard in the chest. The man collapsed from the punch, and for a moment, it was only Arthur and the leader as the other guy was shaking off the pain from the hit. Arthur weathered another hit before giving one of his own to the leader. There was almost no power behind Arthur's punch, as there was almost nothing left. He felt like he was in round 10 of a fight. However, the hit was powerful enough to drop the leader. The last guy punched Arthur, who sank to his knees again from the hit. Arthur then stood back up, waving a bit from the exhaustion, and punched one more time. Luckily, that last punch ended the fight. Thank you so much for listening to episode 8 of The Pugilist. Make sure you tune in tomorrow for an episode of the Monster Manual Backward, where we will be talking about crocodiles and lizards.